For the entire relationship, you were there, present through their withdrawal cycles, patient through their emotional unavailability, understanding when they pushed you away, forgiving when their patterns hurt you repeatedly. You stayed when anyone else would have left. You gave when anyone else would have stopped giving. You understood when anyone else would have stopped trying to understand. You were the empath, the person who saw beneath their defended surface to the wounded person hiding there, the person who had capacity to hold space for their patterns while maintaining hope they'd eventually heal, the person whose empathy was vast enough to accommodate their defended distance while believing the distance was temporary protection that would eventually dissolve. You were the person who made their defended position sustainable, who absorbed the impact of their patterns so they never had to feel the full weight of what their patterns cost, who provided unconditional acceptance that allowed them to remain conditionally available, who gave everything while accepting whatever minimal scraps they provided in return. Your empathy created an environment where the avoidant could be their defended self without experiencing the natural consequences that would have motivated transformation. You were simultaneously their safe harbor and their enabling force, the person who understood them so completely that understanding became excuse for them never having to change, and then you walked away. Not partially, not with the door cracked, not with continued friendship or occasional contact or hope-filled waiting for them to be ready. You walked away completely. You chose yourself over them. You enforced the boundary their patterns had been violating for months or years. You stopped absorbing the impact of their defended distance and let that impact land where it belonged, on them. You withdrew the empathy that had been making their patterns comfortable. You removed the understanding that had been preventing consequences. You ended the unconditional acceptance that had been enabling their conditional availability. You left. And you're leaving. The empath who stayed through everything finally choosing to go initiates specific psychological crisis in the avoidant that is categorically different from losing anyone else. Because losing the empath isn't just losing a relationship, it's losing the only person who made their wounded, defended state feel acceptable. It's losing the environment that allowed them to avoid transformation. It's experiencing for the first time the full unmediated weight of what their patterns actually cost. When the empath walks away, the avoidant's psychological hell begins. Not because the empath was perfect or irreplaceable as individual, because the empath's specific combination of understanding, plus patience, plus unconditional acceptance, created conditions where the avoidant never had to face themselves. And the empath leaving means those conditions are gone. The buffer is removed. The consequences arrive unfiltered. The psychological hell isn't about missing the empath, though they do. It's about finally experiencing reality their patterns create when there's no empath present to absorb the destruction. The 3 layers of hell the avoidant experiences. When the empath walks away, the avoidant's psychological crisis when the empath leaves operates on multiple levels simultaneously, each layer creating distinct suffering that combines into comprehensive hell they've never experienced before. First layer, the immediate loss of their safe person, the only human who truly understood them, is gone, leaving them isolated in ways they've never been isolated. The empath understood them, deeply, completely, understood why they withdrew. Childhood taught them withdrawal was survival. Understood why they were emotionally unavailable. Vulnerability felt dangerous to their wounded system. Understood why they pushed away during intimacy. Closeness triggered their abandonment wounds. The empath saw the patterns and understood the origins. Didn't just tolerate the patterns, understood them. Provided acceptance based on understanding. This understanding created safety, created space where the avoidant could be defended self without judgment. could show their wounds without shame, could exist as damaged person without pressure to be different. The empath was safe person, only person who truly got them. And now that person is gone. The loss creates immediate isolation. Nobody else understands like the empath understood. Nobody else will have the patience to learn their patterns and the empathy to accept them anyway. Nobody else creates the safety the empath created. They're alone, truly alone, with their patterns and their wounds and their defended position that nobody else understands or accepts. The isolation is immediate, is devastating, is first layer of hell. They lost the only person who made being their defended wounded self feel acceptable to anyone, including themselves. Second layer, the delayed recognition of what the empath was absorbing, realizing too late that all the pain they caused was being absorbed by the empath instead of landing on them as consequences. While the empath was there, the avoidant never fully felt the impact of their patterns. The empath absorbed it. When the avoidant withdrew, the empath waited patiently, absorbing the anxiety and abandonment that withdrawal should have created in the avoidant about losing someone. When the avoidant was emotionally unavailable, the empath accepted it understandingly, absorbing the loneliness and relationship failure that unavailability should have created. When the avoidant pushed away, the empath remained present, absorbing the permanent distance that pushing away should have created. Every pattern the avoidant deployed had natural consequence, but natural consequence never landed on the avoidant because the empath absorbed it. The avoidant never felt the full weight of what withdrawal costs because the empath's waiting prevented the cost. Never felt what emotional unavailability destroys because the empath's acceptance prevented the destruction. Never felt what pushing away creates because the empath's presence prevented the creation. Now the empath is gone, and the consequences the empath was absorbing land unfiltered. The avoidant feels what withdrawal actually costs, permanent loss of person who was waiting. Feels what emotional unavailability actually destroys, relationship with person who was accepting it. Feels what pushing away actually creates, permanent distance from person who was remaining present despite being pushed. The delayed recognition is second layer of hell. Recognition that the empath was protecting them from experiencing their own pattern's consequences, and now protection is gone. Consequences are landing. The weight is unbearable because they're finally feeling full impact the empath was absorbing for entire relationship. Third layer, the permanent knowledge that they destroyed the only person who could have helped them heal, creating irreversible loss that haunts them because healing now requires them to do alone what they proved incapable of doing with support. The empath could have helped them heal, had the patience for their healing process, had the understanding of their wounds, had the capacity to stay present while they did uncomfortable transformation work, had the empathy to hold space for their wounded self while their wounded self slowly became whole self. The empath was exactly the partner who could have supported genuine transformation if the avoidant had been willing to do transformation work while the empath was present, but they weren't willing. Chose defended comfort over uncomfortable growth. Chose maintaining patterns over doing work to transform them. Chose taking the empath's support for granted over honoring it through actually using it for healing. And now the empath is gone, and the goneness is permanent. And the permanence means the avoidant lost the only person who would have had patience and understanding and capacity to support the healing work they now recognize they need to do. If they want to heal now, if the hell of the empath's absence motivates them to finally address their wounds, they have to do it alone. Without the support the empath would have provided, without the patience the empath would have offered, without the understanding environment the empath created, They have to transform without the person whose presence would have made transformation supported instead of solitary. This recognition is third layer of hell. They destroyed the only person who could have helped them heal. Did it through taking that person for granted, through choosing patterns over transformation, through destroying, through neglect, what should have been honored through growth. The healing work they need to do is now exponentially harder because they have to do it without the empath who would have made it possible. And knowing they created this loss, knowing they're alone in the healing because they rejected the person who would have supported the healing, is permanent torment that won't resolve. The specific ways the hell manifests in the avoidance daily experience, what losing the empath actually feels like. The psychological hell is an abstract concept. It manifests in concrete daily experiences that make the avoidance life feel unbearable in ways it never felt unbearable before. They try their patterns with new people and discover nobody else tolerates them. Every withdrawal produces abandonment. Every unavailability produces ending, creating a harsh lesson about what patterns actually cost. With the empath, patterns were sustainable. Avoidant could withdraw for weeks and the empath would wait. Could be emotionally unavailable and the empath would accept it. Could push away and the empath would remain. Patterns worked, were comfortable, produced no immediate consequence. But with new people, patterns fail immediately. New person doesn't wait through withdrawal, leaves instead. New person doesn't accept emotional unavailability, ends relationship instead. New person doesn't remain when pushed away, creates permanent distance instead. Every pattern that worked with the empath fails catastrophically with everyone else. Each failure teaches harsh lesson. The patterns only worked because the empath was absorbing the consequences. Without the empath, patterns create immediate relationship destruction. The avoidant is learning in real time what their patterns actually cost. Learning that withdrawal costs connection, emotional unavailability costs relationship, pushing away costs presence. All the costs the empath was absorbing are now landing as immediate consequences with every new person. The harsh education is daily hell. Every attempt to be defended self results in abandonment. Every attempt to maintain patterns results in loss. They're discovering their patterns are unsustainable without someone with empath's capacity to absorb the destruction, and that someone is gone. They're stuck with patterns that destroy every relationship and no empath present to make the patterns sustainable. They reach for the understanding they took for granted and find empty space. The automatic expectation that someone will understand is met with absence, creating continuous collision with loss. For months or years, understanding was automatic. Felt bad and reached for the empath. Understanding was there. Felt, triggered, and reached for the empath. Acceptance was there. Felt defensive and reached for the empath. Patience was there. The reaching was habit. Automatic response. Feel difficult emotion. Reach for the empath who understands. The reaching was so habitual that even after the empath is gone, the reaching continues. Feel bad. Automatic reach for understanding. But the empath isn't there. Feel triggered. Automatic reach for acceptance. But the empath is gone. Feel defensive. Automatic reach for patience. But that patience doesn't exist anymore. Each reach meets absence. Each automatic expectation collides with reality that the understanding is gone. The collision happens multiple times daily. Every time they feel something difficult, they reach automatically for the empath who isn't there. Every collision is fresh reminder of the loss, fresh experience of the absence, fresh encounter with the hell of the empath being gone when every automatic response in their system still expects the empath to be there. The continuous collision between expectation and reality is daily torture. They can't stop reaching because the reaching is automatic. The reaching always meets absence because the empath is gone. The gap between what they expect and what exists is hell. They experience every time they feel difficult emotion that used to trigger automatic reach for empath's understanding. They notice they're becoming worse, not better, more defended, more isolated, more incapable, proving to themselves that they needed the empath in ways they refused to admit while having them. Before the empath left, they could maintain illusion. They're fine. They're managing. They're capable. They don't need anyone. The defended position was sustainable because the empath made it sustainable. But after the empath leaves, the illusion collapses. They're not fine. They're deteriorating. Getting more defended, not less. More isolated, not more connected. More incapable, not more capable. Every week without the empath, they're measurably worse. More withdrawn, more unavailable, more stuck in patterns. The worsening proves what they refuse to admit. They needed the empath, needed the stability the empath provided, needed the understanding that made their wounds bearable, needed the presence that prevented complete isolation. The empath wasn't just person they were dating. The empath was infrastructure of their functioning. Was support system preventing deterioration? Was environment allowing them to maintain even defended version of functionality? And now that infrastructure is gone. That support is removed. That environment is destroyed. And they're collapsing, becoming worse, proving through their decline that they needed the empath in ways they arrogantly denied while the empath was present. The recognition that they needed the person they took for granted, proven by their measurable worsening without that person, is hell that intensifies daily as they watch themselves deteriorate. The uncomfortable mirror. Turn if you're the empath. Reading this, ask yourself why you need to know about their hell. But if you're the empath reading this, stop and examine why you're here. Why you need to know that the avoidant is experiencing hell after you walked away. Why their suffering matters to you. Why the psychological crisis you created by leaving is something you want to understand. Because if you've genuinely walked away for yourself, if you've genuinely chosen your healing, if you're genuinely building life without them, their hell should be irrelevant to you. You shouldn't care that they're suffering. Shouldn't need to know the empath leaving creates crisis for them. Shouldn't be seeking validation through their psychological torment. The fact that you want to know about their hell reveals something about where you still are. Not fully detached, not fully choosing yourself, not fully free. You're still oriented toward them, still needing their suffering to validate your choice to leave, still using their crisis as measure of your significance, still partially hoping their hell will motivate them to transform and come back worthy of you. This orientation means you haven't fully walked away. You physically left, but you're mentally still there, tracking their response to your absence, needing their hell to prove your leaving was right choice, or to prove you mattered enough to create hell by leaving. Real walking away means their hell is background noise you don't track, means their suffering is irrelevant to your healing, means you're so busy building your own life that whether they're experiencing crisis or thriving without you is information you don't seek because it doesn't serve your forward movement. Stop needing to know about their hell. Stop tracking their suffering. Stop organizing emotional energy around their crisis. Walk away completely, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, completely. Their hell is their experience. Your freedom is yours. Both can exist. Only one should matter to you. Choose the one that serves your healing. Stop tracking the one that keeps you oriented towards someone you needed to leave. Why the hell is actually necessary for any possibility of the avoidance transformation, the educational function of unmediated consequences, the psychological hell the avoidant experiences when the empath walks away serves crucial function. It's the only condition that might motivate genuine transformation rather than continued defended stuckness. The empath's presence was preventing the pain necessary for transformation. Comfortable people don't change. Only suffering people are motivated to do difficult work. While the empath was present, the avoidant was comfortable. Defended position was sustainable. Patterns worked. Wounds could remain unhealed because the empath accepted wounded self. Life was manageable. Uncomfortable sometimes, but manageable. And manageable doesn't motivate transformation. Comfortable doesn't create urgency for change. People change when pain of staying the same exceeds pain of changing. While the empath was absorbing the consequences, the avoidant experienced minimal pain from staying the same. No urgency, no motivation. No reason to do the difficult, uncomfortable, years-long work of healing attachment wounds. But the empath leaving creates unbearable pain, creates hell, creates suffering so intense that for first time, pain of staying the same might exceed pain of changing. The hell is necessary, is the only thing that creates sufficient motivation. The empath's presence was preventing the educational pain. The empath's absence is providing it. The hell isn't punishment, it's education. It's natural consequence finally landing without buffer. It's the avoidant finally experiencing what their patterns cost when there's no empath present to absorb the cost. This experiencing is what might, if they're capable, motivate genuine transformation. The hell forces confrontation with their patterns in ways the empath's understanding never did. Understanding created acceptance. Hell creates urgency for change. The empath understood their patterns, explained the patterns back to them. You withdraw when you feel vulnerable because your childhood taught you vulnerability leads to hurt. The understanding was accurate, was compassionate, was complete, and was completely ineffective at motivating change. Because understanding without consequence creates acceptance, not urgency. The avoidant heard the understanding and thought, yes, that's why I do this. The understanding validated the patterns, made them explainable, made them acceptable, eliminated pressure to change them, because if patterns are understandable, patterns are okay. But the hell doesn't understand. The hell just is unbearable suffering created by patterns meeting reality without empath present to mediate. The hell says, your patterns are destroying your life, not in understanding compassionate way, in brutal, unmediated way. The hell creates urgency understanding never created, creates pressure to change, understanding actively prevented. The hell forces confrontation with simple truth. These patterns don't work. They're unsustainable. They're creating unbearable suffering. They must change, or the suffering continues indefinitely. The confrontation the hell forces is what might create actual transformation, where the empath's understanding created only comfortable acceptance of defended state. If they use the hell for growth rather than defending harder, the empath walking away becomes the event that saved them. But this only works if empath stays gone and doesn't relieve the hell by returning. The hell creates opportunity, creates sufficient pain to motivate transformation, creates urgency for change, creates confrontation with patterns that must be addressed. This is potential. Potential for the avoidant to use the hell for genuine sustained therapeutic work, to finally address attachment wounds, to reprogram nervous system responses, to develop capacity for intimacy, to transform defended wounded self into capable whole self. The potential exists, but potential only becomes reality if the hell continues, if the pain remains sufficient, if the urgency doesn't dissipate, and the hell only continues if the empath stays gone. If the empath returns, if empathic nature makes the empath want to relieve the avoidant suffering, the hell ends. The pain is relieved. The urgency disappears. The motivation evaporates. The avoidant returns to comfortable state where patterns are sustainable because the empath is absorbing consequences again. The return destroys the only opportunity for transformation. The empath walking away creates the opportunity. The empath staying gone maintains the opportunity. The empath returning destroys the opportunity. If the avoidant is going to transform, it requires the empath's permanent absence, maintaining the hell that motivates the transformation. The empath's staying gone is gift to the avoidant's potential growth, even though it feels like cruelty. It's the only thing that creates conditions where genuine transformation might occur. The two possible outcomes of the psychological hell and why only one serves anyone. When the empath walks away and the avoidance hell begins, two distinct paths forward exist. Understanding both helps the empath maintain the boundary that serves everyone involved. Outcome 1. The avoidant uses the hell to defend harder, building higher walls, becoming more isolated, staying more stuck, ensuring no future empath ever reaches them again. Some avoidants respond to hell by defending harder, by concluding, intimacy is too dangerous, empaths are too threatening, letting anyone close creates too much vulnerability. The lesson they learn from the hell isn't I need to heal. The lesson is I need better defenses. They build higher walls, become more emotionally unavailable, more defended against intimacy, more committed to patterns that prevent anyone from getting close enough to hurt them the way the empath's leaving hurt them. They become more stuck, not less stuck. More isolated, not less isolated. More damaged, not less damaged. This outcome doesn't serve them, doesn't create growth, doesn't lead to healing, leads to progressive deterioration into more defended, more wounded, more isolated version of already defended, wounded, isolated person. This outcome is tragic, but it's their choice, their response to the hell. The empath can't control which outcome occurs, can only maintain the condition, the permanent absence that makes either outcome possible. If this outcome occurs, if they defend harder, the empath staying gone at least prevents the empath from wasting more years with someone who's becoming progressively more incapable. Outcome 2. The avoidant uses the hell as motivation for genuine transformation. Years of therapy creating actual capacity that benefits their future even though it comes too late to benefit the empath. Other avoidants respond to hell by finally doing the work, by using the unbearable suffering as motivation for genuine sustained therapeutic work. They find attachment specialist, do EMDR for the trauma, do somatic work for the nervous system, commit to years of uncomfortable transformation work, address the wounds, reprogram the responses, develop capacity for sustained intimacy, transform defended, wounded self into capable whole self. This transformation is real, is genuine, is hard-won through years of sustained effort, motivated by the hell of having lost the empath. This outcome serves them, creates genuine growth, leads to actual healing, makes them capable of healthy relationship. And even this positive outcome doesn't benefit the empath who created it through walking away. Because by the time the avoidant has genuinely transformed, if transformation occurs, which takes years, the empath is so far past them that the capacity is irrelevant. The empath is with someone else, or happily alone, or so healed from what that relationship cost that the avoidance transformation is just interesting news about someone who no longer matters to the empath's daily life. The transformation serves the avoidance future, serves whoever they encounter after transformation is complete, but comes too late to benefit the empath who created the condition for transformation by walking away and staying gone. What the empath's walking away actually accomplishes the permanent shift for both people. Understanding what the empath's walking away creates for both people helps the empath recognize why staying gone serves everyone even when staying gone is uncomfortable. The empath gets freedom to heal from what absorbing those consequences cost, finally processing the damage that was done while being the buffer between avoidant and their pattern's impact. While absorbing consequences, the empath was harmed, absorbed anxiety that should have landed on the avoidant, absorbed loneliness that should have motivated the avoidant toward connection, absorbed pain that should have created urgency for the avoidant to change. All this absorption created damage in the empath, created wounds, created depletion, created harm that couldn't be addressed while the empath was still in absorbing role. Walking away ends the absorption, creates space for the empath to finally process the damage, to heal the wounds that were created through being buffer, to restore the energy that was depleted through constant giving without reciprocation, to address the harm that occurred through loving someone whose patterns were harmful. The walking away is empath choosing their own healing over continued absorption of someone else's consequences. This choice serves the empath completely, creates the space necessary for recovery, creates the boundary necessary for healing, creates the freedom necessary for the empath to finally become whole after years of making themselves smaller to accommodate the avoidant's defended position. The avoidant gets reality check about what patterns cost when there's no empath to absorb the destruction. The only education that might penetrate defended worldview ended. The avoidant gets education, gets unmediated reality, gets experience of what patterns actually cost when there's no buffer, gets hell that teaches what the empath's understanding never taught. This education is harsh, is painful, is hell, and is the only thing that might actually teach them. The empath's understanding taught them their patterns were explainable and therefore acceptable. The hell teaches them their patterns are unsustainable and therefore must change. The empath's presence taught them wounds could remain unhealed and life could still function. The hell teaches them wounds create unbearable suffering when there's no one present to absorb the suffering for them. The education the hell provides is what the avoidant needed but would never have received while the empath was providing buffering presence. The hell serves the avoidant, if they're capable of being served by it, by providing education that might motivate transformation. Whether they use the education is their choice. But the empath walking away is what provides the education that wouldn't exist if the empath stayed. Both people get what they actually needed. The empath needed to stop sacrificing themselves. The avoidant needed to experience unmediated consequences, even though neither feels like gift in the moment. The empath needed to stop absorbing, needed to stop sacrificing themselves to maintain the avoidant's comfortable defended position, needed to choose themselves, needed to enforce the boundary that protects their well-being. The walking away is the empath finally doing what they needed to do, finally choosing themselves, finally stopping the self-sacrifice that was harming them while enabling the avoidant. The stopping is what the empath needed, even though it felt like loss, felt like failure, felt like abandoning someone who needed them. The avoidant needed consequences, needed unmediated reality, needed the hell that teaches what understanding never taught, needed the buffer removed so the impact lands on them instead of being absorbed by someone else. The hell is what the avoidant needed, even though it feels like punishment, feels like abandonment, feels like cruelty. Both people are getting what they actually needed. The empath getting freedom to heal. The avoidant getting education through consequences. Both feel painful. Both feel like loss. Both are actually gifts. The empath's gift to themselves through choosing themselves. The avoidance gift from the empath through creating conditions where growth might occur. Neither feels like gift in moment. Both serve the people receiving them in ways that become clear only later. The final truth about what happens when the empath walks away. When the empath walks away, the avoidance psychological hell begins. The safe person is gone. The consequences land unfiltered. The patterns fail with everyone else. The automatic reaching meets empty space. The deterioration proves the need that was denied. The hell is comprehensive, is unbearable, is exactly what needs to happen. For the empath, walking away creates freedom. Freedom from absorbing. Freedom from sacrificing. Freedom from enabling. Freedom to heal from damage that was done. Freedom to become whole again after years of making themselves smaller. For the avoidant, the empath walking away creates hell. Hell of unmediated consequences. Hell of patterns failing. Hell of need becoming undeniable through its absence. Hell that might, if they're capable, motivate genuine transformation, or might motivate harder defending. Either way, hell that's necessary because comfort was preventing growth. Both outcomes serve their recipients if the empath maintains the boundary. The empath maintaining freedom serves the empath's healing. The avoidant maintaining hell serves the avoidant's potential transformation, or at minimum, prevents the empath from wasting more time if transformation doesn't occur. The hell the avoidant experiences when the empath walks away is real, is devastating, is comprehensive, and is none of the empath's responsibility to relieve. The empath's responsibility is maintaining the boundary, staying gone, choosing their own healing over the avoidant's comfort, letting the hell continue without returning to relieve it. This responsibility to themselves serves everyone, serves the empath through creating space for healing, serves the avoidant through maintaining conditions where transformation might occur. The empath walking away and staying gone is the most loving thing the empath can do for themselves and paradoxically for the avoidant who experiences it as hell. Let the avoidant have their hell. Let the consequences land unmediated. Let the patterns fail with everyone else. Let the automatic reaching meet permanent absence. Let the education occur through suffering, since education through understanding was ineffective. That's what the empath walking away accomplishes. That's what staying gone maintains. The avoidance hell is beginning. The empath's freedom is expanding. Both are happening. Both are appropriate. Both serve the people experiencing them. The hell teaches. The freedom heals. Both are necessary. Both are gifts, even though only one feels like gift. The empath walked away. The hell began. The empath's job now is staying away, letting the hell continue, choosing freedom over guilt about the hell. That's the path. That's what serves everyone. The hell will teach the avoidant what comfort never taught, that patterns have real costs, that consequences are real, that the empath who was absorbing everything was making defended positions sustainable, and now that position is unsustainable, and transformation is the only path forward. Whether they take that path is their choice. The empath's choice is maintaining the absence that makes the path necessary. Choose absence. Choose freedom. Choose healing. Let them have their hell. You have your liberation. Both are permanent. Both are right. Both serve their purpose. Live in your freedom. Let them learn from their hell. That's what happens when the empath walks away. Hell begins for one person. Freedom begins for another. Both are exactly what needed to happen. Honor, both by maintaining the separation that created both. Honor, both by maintaining the separation that created both. The specific hell of realizing too late that the empath was the exception, not the rule. Part of what makes the psychological hell so intense is the avoidant's dawning recognition that the empath's capacity was exceptional, not standard, and that exception is gone forever. They assumed empathic capacity was common, that they could find another patient, understanding person whenever they wanted, making the empath replaceable. During the relationship with the empath, the avoidant took the empathy for granted, assumed it was standard, assumed everyone would be this patient with their withdrawal, assumed anyone would be this understanding of their patterns, assumed tolerance for emotional unavailability was normal rather than exceptional. This assumption made the empath feel replaceable, feel like one version of something the avoidant could find again easily. The assumption was protective. Let the avoidant take the empath for granted without feeling the risk of that taking for granted. If empaths are common, losing this one isn't catastrophic. Just find another. But after the empath leaves, the avoidant starts looking, starts trying to find the same capacity in someone new, and discovers the empath wasn't standard. The empath was exceptional. Most people don't have that level of patience, don't have that depth of understanding, don't have that capacity to hold space for wounded, defended person without requiring reciprocation or transformation. The empath was outlier, was rare, was exception, not rule. And that exception is gone. This recognition that what they took for granted as common was actually exceptional, and that exceptional is gone permanently, is specific layer of hell. They assumed they could replace the empath. They're discovering the empath is irreplaceable, not because the empath was perfect, because the empath's specific combination of qualities, the patience, the understanding, the capacity to absorb without breaking, the empathy without boundaries, is rare enough that finding it again might be impossible. Every new person highlights what the empath provided by not providing it, creating constant reminder through absence of what was lost. New person gets close. Avoidant withdraws. New person doesn't wait, leaves instead. The not waiting highlights what the empath provided. The empath waited, patiently, for weeks or months. Waited without resentment, without pressure, without ultimatums. The empath's waiting is suddenly visible through its absence, through new person's refusal to wait. Every new person who doesn't provide what the empath provided creates fresh recognition of what the empath was providing. New person doesn't understand without extensive explanation, highlights that empath understood without needing explanation. New person doesn't forgive patterns repeatedly, highlights that empath forgave over and over. New person doesn't accept emotional unavailability, highlights that empath accepted it for years. Each new person becomes mirror, reflecting what the empath was through showing what they're not. Each interaction with someone new creates fresh grief about what was lost, fresh recognition of what the empath provided that nobody else provides. The constant highlighting of the empath's exceptional qualities through encountering people who lack those qualities is daily hell. Every date, every interaction, every new connection, all of them show the avoidant what they lost through showing them what the empath uniquely was. The comparison is inescapable, creates permanent reminder that the person they took for granted was providing something they can't find anywhere else. They realize the empath's too much was actually their perfect match, and they rejected their perfect match by treating exceptional capacity as burden. During relationship, the empath's needs felt like too much. The empath wanted emotional availability, felt demanding. The empath wanted consistent presence, felt suffocating. The empath wanted reciprocal partnership, felt overwhelming. The avoidant experienced the empath's needs as burden, as excessive demands, as the empath being too much. But after the empath leaves and the avoidant encounters people who give less, the recognition arrives. The empath wasn't too much. The empath was exactly right, was perfect match for what the avoidant's wounded self actually needed, even though their defended self experienced it as threat. The empath's emotional availability was what could have helped them heal if they'd accepted it instead of defending against it. The empath's consistent presence was what could have created the safety their wounded self desperately needed. The empath's desire for reciprocal partnership was invitation to become capable of genuine intimacy. Everything the avoidant experienced as too much was actually exactly what they needed. Was their perfect match? Was the person whose capacity was sufficient to reach them beneath their defenses and whose patience was sufficient to wait while they slowly learned to trust that reaching. And they rejected this perfect match, rejected it by experiencing exceptional capacity as burden, by treating what they needed as threat, by pushing away exactly what their wounded self was seeking. This recognition that they had their perfect match and rejected it through defending against it is hell that intensifies as they encounter person after person who isn't perfect match, who doesn't have exceptional capacity, who can't reach them the way the empath reached them. They had it. They destroyed it. They can't find it again. The recognition creates permanent grief about having rejected the exception while mistaking it for the rule. Why? The hell intensifies over time rather than diminishing. The inverse healing curve. Most losses fade with time, but the avoidance loss of the empath actually intensifies as time passes, creating inverse relationship with healing, where more time equals more suffering rather than less. Time proves the loss is permanent rather than temporary. As months become years, the hope that empath will return dies, making loss feel more real and more devastating. Early after the empath leaves, the avoidant maintains hope. Maybe temporary. Maybe the empath just needs space. Maybe after some time passes, the empath will return. The hope protects from full weight of loss, makes loss feel temporary, makes suffering feel like phase that will pass when the empath comes back. But time passes. Weeks become months. Months become years. The empath doesn't return, doesn't reach out, doesn't soften, stays completely gone. And as time accumulates without the empath returning, the hope dies. The temporary becomes permanent. The maybe they'll come back becomes they're actually gone forever. And permanent loss is more devastating than temporary loss. Temporary loss has hope attached. Permanent loss has only grief. The hope dying as time proves, the empath is actually gone permanently, makes the hell worse over time instead of better. The loss feels more real at year 2 than at month 2, feels more devastating at year 5 than at year 1, because accumulated time is proof. Proof the empath is never coming back. Proof the loss is permanent. Proof the hope was illusion. The proving makes the hell worse as time passes rather than better. Each new relationship failure adds weight. Every person who isn't the empath, every pattern that fails, accumulates into crushing evidence they destroyed irreplaceable person. The avoidant tries new relationships. Each one fails. Fails because they withdraw and new person leaves. Fails because they're emotionally unavailable and new person can't accept it. Fails because patterns that worked with empath don't work with anyone else. Each failure adds weight. adds evidence. Evidence that the empath was irreplaceable. Evidence that patterns only worked because of the empath's exceptional capacity. Evidence that they destroyed something they can't find again. The evidence accumulates. First, failed relationship. Maybe coincidence. Third, failed relationship. Maybe pattern. 10th, failed relationship. Definitive proof that the problem is them. And the empath was the only person whose capacity was sufficient to make relationship with them sustainable. The accumulated evidence of irreplaceability makes the loss feel heavier over time. At month 2, they lost the empath, but haven't yet proven the empath is irreplaceable. At year 5, they've proven it through serial relationship failures. The proving makes the hell worse, makes the loss feel more significant, makes the grief more intense. Each new failure adds to the weight of having destroyed the one person who could have made it work. They achieve things, but the empath isn't there to share them. Accomplishments feel empty when achieved after losing the person who would have celebrated them. The avoidant grows, achieves things, makes progress in life, gets promotion, accomplishes goal, develops new capacity, and every accomplishment feels empty, feels hollow, because the empath isn't there. The empath was the person who would have celebrated with them, would have been genuinely proud, would have recognized the significance. But the empath is gone. The accomplishments happen in absence of the person who would have made accomplishments feel meaningful through sharing them. This creates specific hell that intensifies over time. Early after the loss, they haven't achieved much yet, but as years pass, accomplishments accumulate. Each one arrives with recognition. The empath would have loved this. The empath would have been proud. The empath would have celebrated. And the empath isn't there. Each accomplishment creates fresh grief about the absence, fresh recognition of what was lost. The accomplishments that should feel good feel bad because they're happening without the person who made life feel shareable. This intensifying over time makes the hell worse in year 3 than in month 3. More accomplishments have occurred without the empath there to share them. More evidence has accumulated that life's victories feel empty when achieved in absence of the person who made victories feel meaningful.